Hello and welcome to the second instalment of Lore of the Storm. As the eternal conflict continues to rage, we continue to cover the lore behind your favourite heroes, and the lore within the Battlefield of Eternity map. Today, we'll be looking at the most recent hero, Leoric. The Order of Zakarum is a religious sect in the Diablo universe that started from a single impassioned prophet, Akarat, to become one of the largest religions in the world of Sanctuary. Deep in meditation, Akarat was visited by the Archangel Yarius. At least, that is what he believed, as Yarius may not even exist. Within Akarat's vision, Yarius taught him the importance of resisting evil and embracing the light. The light is a force that can be called upon by those aligned with it, and is frequently wielded by angels against the demons of the burning hells. Akarat travelled to the empire of Kyrgyzstan, sent by his vision as a prophet to share his belief that humans are powerful vessels of light, and should strive to discover their Zakarum inner light to live happy lives. It was not Akarat's intent for his teachings to become a religious order, but that they did, and over time the Zakarum Church became a very powerful political and religious institute. Leoric was not born to the title King of Khandurus. He began his journey to become king as a lord of the Zakarum, hailing from Kyrgyzstan. A devout follower of the light, Leoric was instructed by his church to travel to the lands of Khandurus and proclaim himself king. Even at this early stage, Leoric's tragic end was inevitable. The faith of the Zakarum had been corrupted by the prime evil, Mephisto. A soulstone containing Mephisto's essence had been given to the church to safeguard by the Horodrim, an order of mages created by Tyrael to combat the prime evils. Despite being trapped in his soulstone, Mephisto was still able to bend some of the highest ranking members of the church to his will. Those that resisted were murdered in horrific fashion. The highest ranking member of the church, Kalim, was able to resist, but was dismembered by the High Council at Mephisto's order. His body parts spread all over the kingdom. Using the church, Mephisto sought to free his brothers, Diablo and Baal, who had also been confined to soulstones by the Horodrim. Diablo had been buried deep beneath the town of Tristram, hidden in catacombs created by the Horodrim under the now decrepit Tristram Cathedral. Many accompanied Leoric to Khandurus. Priests and knights of the Zakarum faith, his sons Aiden and Albrecht, his wife Asilla, and his advisor Archbishop Lazarus. Lazarus had been among those that had been entrusted with guarding Mephisto's soulstone, and one of the first to fall under the Lord of Hatred's sway. Mephisto entrusted Lazarus to convince Leoric to make the small town of Tristram his seat of power within Khandurus, and convert the old rundown Horodric monastery into a resplendent Zakarum cathedral, unaware of what lay beneath. Trusting in his advisor, Leoric took heed of his advice, but would later admit in his journal that he found Tristram to be an odd place for a king to settle.
We have just arrived in Tristram, and I must say, I'm a bit dismayed. This place is a backwater filled with serfs and an ancient broken-down monastery, hardly fit for the king of Khandurus. I cannot fathom why Lazarus was so intent on this becoming our new seat of power.
At first, the townsfolk of Tristram were wary of their new self-imposed king from a foreign land. However, Leoric proved to be an excellent ruler. Leoric converted the once sleepy town into the Khandurus capital. He ruled fairly and wisely, exemplifying the virtues of the Zakarum Church. Over time, he won the hearts and minds of his subjects, and years of peace and content were had under Leoric's reign. The town blacksmith Griswold held such respect for the king that he crafted him a crown and sword of mithril. During these years of peace, a sinister voice called out to Lazarus. Diablo had awakened within his soulstone and could sense his freedom drew close. As Lazarus slept, Diablo penetrated his thoughts, entering his nightmares, and lured the Archbishop into the forgotten Herodric catacombs. Fear fueling him, Lazarus raced through the subterranean labyrinth until at the very bottom he found the glistening red soulstone of Diablo. He grasped the artifact and, lifting it above his head, threw it to the ground, shattering the stone. Diablo formed in front of the man that was to become his devout subject, enlightening the Archbishop that there was more beyond the realm of sanctuary, the high heavens, the burning hells, and the eternal conflict that had raged between these two realms. While Diablo had returned, the Lord of Terror was weak, having been dormant in the Soulstone for such a long period of time. To help anchor Diablo to the mortal realm and allow the demon to claim back his once vast power, he required a mortal host. Diablo sensed the unsuspecting souls that lay up above him in the town of Tristram, and decided the strongest of these souls would be his new vessel, King Leoric. As Diablo began to make his attempt to claim the king's body as his own, Leoric's mood changed, becoming more reclusive and irrational. Leoric was no fool, and could sense something evil was trying to take hold of him.
I am convinced that some malevolent being is attempting to wrest control of my thoughts away from me. Voices direct me to horrendous acts, and there are times when I seem unable to control my body. Lazarus knows. This is certain. He looks at me strangely when he thinks me otherwise disposed.
Despite knowing of what was happening, the Lord of Terror's attacks on his mind began to rip away at Leoric's sanity. He had kept Diablo's attack a secret, believing his faith in the light would help him pull through. He was wrong. The assault did not just affect Leoric's mind, but it also affected his body, his once proud visage becoming worn and tired. Leoric's irrational behaviour began to spiral out of control into full madness. The quick-to-anger king would execute any that even slightly disagreed or questioned his actions. His malice extended to his court, savagely beating those that displeased him and even foreign dignitaries with his scepter. As time progressed, the king grew even more mad, and paranoia ate away at his soul. This drastically changed Leoric became known as the Black King to the people of Tristram. Leoric's wrath did not just extend to Tristram. He sent his army to bully neighbouring towns, and at the height of his madness declared war on the kingdom of Westmarch, convinced the kingdom planned to attack his own. Leoric had taken this action at the urging of Lazarus. In contrast to his previous statement, under the Lord of Terror's influence, Leoric now only trusted his devious advisor. Westmarch was a kingdom with one of the most powerful armies in Sanctuary. Others tried their best to convince the king that this war was unjust and unwinnable. Nevertheless, with Lazarus bending his ear, the invasion was launched. The Knights of Kandorus, as well as Leoric's son Aiden, desperately seeking his father's approval, were sent to their deaths, led by Lachdanan. Lachdanan had for some time been trying to find the cause of Leoric's madness, but had been waylaid by Lazarus at every turn. In desperation to stop Lachdanan's prying, Lazarus accused him of treason. Knowing Lachdanan to be just and true, the knights and priests of Leoric's courts dismissed this as absurd. It was for this reason Lazarus convinced Leoric that Lachdanan should lead the attack on Westmarch, a calculated move to remove Lachdanan from Leoric's court. Diablo and Lazarus' sway over Leoric was so absolute that they were even able to convince the king that his loving wife conspired against him.
My lord, the prisoner is ready, as you requested.
Thank you, Lazarus. Your loyalty is invaluable in the midst of all these traitors. And you, my dear, my own wife and queen, conspiring against our kingdom.
My love, I swear, I have never betrayed you.
Lyyz until the very end.
With no more obstacles, Diablo was free to claim Leoric as his vessel, but did not. Despite all the evil Leoric had committed under Diablo's influence, there was still a small piece of his soul that fought against Diablo's corrupting influence. Diablo realised he would never reach his full power with Leoric as his host, and abandoned his attempt to wrest control of the man's body, leaving the king deranged and broken. Instead, Lazarus was able to bring Leoric's son Albrecht to Diablo, an easier host to fully manipulate to the Lord of Terror's will, Diablo taking control very quickly. With his son gone, Leoric's paranoia grew yet more, ordering executions left, right and centre, accusing the people of conspiring against him and kidnapping his beloved son. The Black King's reign would soon come to an end. Broken and beaten from a devastating defeat against Westmarch, Lacdanan returned with what few men he had left. Infuriated by his army's failure, Leoric raged against them, spitting curses and accusing his loyal subjects of treason. With a heavy heart, realising his king was far too mad for him to ever save, Lacdanan ended Leoric's life.
Keep your distance from him. This burden is mine to bear. May death bring peace from your madness, Leoric.
Traitors! Even in death, the armies of Condorus will still obey their king, even if you will not.
While Leoric had committed terrible acts during the final parts of his reign, Lacdanan and his men still wished to give their beloved king a proper burial. Down several levels of the catacombs discovered below the cathedral, they lay their king to rest. But Diablo was not done tormenting Leoric yet. His body and soul were raised once again as the Skeleton King, a fearsome warlord that commanded the bones of the dead as his army. The final ramblings of Leoric had come true. Even in death, the armies of Condorus would still obey their king. The dark powers that swept through Leoric's burial chamber to resurrect him also affected the knights laying him to rest. They were overcome at once, transforming into the Skeleton King's terrifying Hell Knights, his elite soldiers. The only knight to resist was Lacdanan. He fought his way out of the Skeleton King's new throne room and travelled deep into the catacombs to die alone. His final noble act. For if he too were to succumb and become a Hell Knight, he did not wish to harm the townsfolk up above him. The Skeleton King revived, and demons massing in the catacombs, the town of Tristram was thrown into a state of panic, aware that their inevitable end marched ever closer to them. At least it would have done, if not for the arrival of Aiden. The king's son had returned later from the Westmarch defeat than Lacdanan's unit, and was horrified to learn of his father's death and what had become of the kingdom. With a steely resolve, Aiden, with a couple of companions, ventured into the depths of the Tristram Cathedral. Aiden fought his way through the demonic host, even slaying an imposing butcher demon. When Aiden entered a chamber deep within the catacombs, he heard a familiar voice.
The warmth of life has entered my tomb. Prepare yourself, mortal, to serve my master for eternity.
The Skeleton King had been massing a skeletal army that was almost ready to leave the catacombs and burn Tristram to the ground. After fighting through a host of skeletons, Aiden came face to face with his undead father, wielding the mithril sword he had been gifted in life. After a fierce battle, Aiden was able to bring peace to his father and promised that he would do his best to find and save his brother Albrecht. Aiden ventured yet further and was able to bring peace to Lacdanan as well, finding an elixir for the night that would allow him to pass peacefully and not return as a Hell Knight. He also found Albrecht was beyond saving. Diablo was slain, and all that remained behind was the corpse of his brother, and Diablo's soulstone. Leoric, yet again, would not be allowed to rest, the events of Diablo 3 bringing new life to the Skeleton King. As Deckard Cain, last of the Horadrim, researched the prophecy of end days within a long-abandoned Tristram cathedral, the events of the prophecy began to play out. A fiery meteor fell from the sky, crashing into the cathedral and taking Cain into the depths of the catacombs that lay beneath. The energies created by this meteor caused the dead to rise around the long-ago ruined city of Tristram. One to be reawakened was the spirit of the Skeleton King. The king set about tormenting Cain, raising skeletons to attack the scholar. Luckily for Cain, his adopted niece Lyyz had sent an adventurer to aid him.
Oh, minions, stay back! Back! May this wedge hold. The Skeleton King?
The power of the fallen star awakened me, and soon all will suffer as I have suffered. Gods, bring me his bones!
There was only one way to put Leoric to rest, binding his spirit to his body and defeating him yet again. With help from the blacksmith Heydrich Aemon, the hero was able to recover Leoric's broken crown, protected by the spirit of Heydrich's grandfather, who had served as a chancellor under Leoric. Chancellor Aemon had helped many flee Tristram, but later died from a sword wound. Sadly, his family's name was dragged through the mud, as Leoric's madness would later be blamed on him. After defeating the Chancellor's spirit, who was desperately trying to stop the heroes from bringing the monster that was Leoric back from the dead, Heydrich repaired the crown. Again, the hero ventured into the Tristram Cathedral catacombs to find Leoric's remains. The Skeleton King tried to kill the hero, his spirit sending wave upon wave of his skeletal minions to assault them. The hero managed to make their way through Leoric's army and his traps until they stood before the remains of the Skeleton King, propped up upon a throne. The crown was placed upon Leoric's head, and with a foreboding shudder, the Skeleton King's body came to life yet again. Raising skeletal minions, swinging his giant mace, and teleporting around the room, the Skeleton King proved to be quite a handful for the hero. But eventually, they won out. Hopefully, Leoric could finally rest in peace. Behind the Skeleton King's throne lay the meteor, which turned out to merely be a man in rags. While defeated, the hero saw many of the past horrors left behind by Leoric's terrible reign as they continued on their adventure. They entered Leoric's stately home and found his extensive torture chambers that the maddened king used during his reign. They also met the restless soul of his wife, Asilla. She implored the hero to finally set free the long-tortured spirits of her subjects and slay the towering jailer that watched over them. The hero gladly accepted, and Asilla and her subjects' souls were finally at rest, having suffered for over 20 years. So, there you have it, the lore behind the tragic Skeleton King. Once a noble and kind man, twisted into a hideous monster. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, a like and share helps spread it round the internet like an undead host. If you want to see more of this series in the future, hitting the subscribe button is the way to go. Of course, if like Leoric, Diablo has control of your thoughts, then I'll understand when you hit the dislike button. All the artists I've been able to find are credited in the description below. I hope you join me next time for The Monk, and to find out about the mercenaries that you can convince to fight for you on the Battlefield of Eternity map. Till then guys, I look forward to battling you in the Nexus.